Good afternoon and welcome to the Tonya Esquibel Real Estate Show. Tonya Esquibel here every Saturday from noon to 1 with my co-host Kim Hollingshead and Associates, real estate attorney, and brings us so much knowledge to our industry. You have a teaching spirit, and that's kind of why I started this radio show probably almost 20 years ago, is to give people a platform to where they can learn and listen, because real estate is one of the biggest investments you're going to make. It's one of the biggest things to help you build wealth. And Kim, you always find the wonderful, greatest guests that are just killing it, even in this market. I know we're going to talk about an update with mortgage rates and also what is Nashville real estate looking like, because we're getting ready to finish up this third quarter and start our fourth quarter pretty soon. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today to help bring some education. One thing that I do want to talk about is some special programs that Cross Country just got to help consumers, 100% financing.
Nice.
So I actually, all of our down payment assistance programs, I had to put on 2 pages for a flyer because we have so many out there. So a lot of clients still think that they've got to put 20% down. And the thing with this down payment assistance program, they, some of them, you don't have to be a first-time home buyer, and they're still giving down payments. So that is something that was really cool that we rolled out a couple of weeks ago. And so I've been trying to get that message out there to our builders and our realtors so they can start sharing that with our consumers. So, but let's introduce our special guest that you brought in today.
We have a really special guest today.
We do.
Now, Tonya, you guys know each other.
I know.
We do.
Yeah, for a long time. We've got Richard Courtney in the house today.
Good afternoon.
Hello. Yes. Now, Richard, would you please share with our listeners a little bit about your history, a little of your CV, I guess?
Yes. I have been selling real estate for 45 years, and I'm still trying to decide what to do when I grow up. But this works for now anyway. But it is interesting to have that history because 7% interest sounds really low if you go back to 1990, 1991, and we thought if it ever got under 10, we'd be, printing money right and left. But but now people are used to these fake rates from the past, and so things being normal now seem high. But I bet, and Tonya will back me up probably, that we just need to get used to this.
Yeah. Rates rose about 0.5% just in the last week. And, a lot of projections say inflation, as it starts to get in line, we're going to see rates improve, but we're just not seeing enough improvement with inflation. So I think a lot of people think when the short-term rates rise, it automatically means long-term. Well, really what's pushing the long-term is inflation, not the short-term.
Right.
Cuts or raises by the Fed. So you're exactly right. And the other challenge that we have is not only do we have low rates, but those low rates helped people make their mortgage payments affordable because our sales prices have increased so much over the last 5 years. And so now you've got, your purchasing power is affected by rising appreciation prices and also now that 7.5% interest rate. And that's even... The other third thing that a lot of consumers don't know is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac put extra loan level pricing adjustments in place on May 1st. What that means is they actually, whatever the bond market's doing regardless, they increase their rates overall with the pricing adjustments. And so that has actually pushed a lot of investors and second home buyers totally out of that market. Because, normally when you look at a rate sheet, we always call what's a par rate. No one paid discount points for the last 25 years.
Right.
So with the discount points now being a predominant thing in this market and your sales price is rising, a discount point, if you're buying a $900,000 home, that's $9,000 that, 2 years ago, you were not paying that.
Right.
And plus you had a low rate. So the challenge with investors in second home is we don't have par rates. So I can't even quote them a high enough rate without them paying a discount point.
Right.
So that's been a big shift that I've seen since May 1st with those adjustments when it comes to investors and second home buyers. Now, there's still opportunity out there. Don't get me wrong. It's just you're going to pay some discount points and you're going to put money down. I've got a guy that's closing. He went under contract. He's doing 15% down as an investor. His rate is 8.125, and he's paying 2 points for that rate.
And he's doing it because he's still going to make money on the appreciation and the income from the property.
And the rental income on it.
So to illustrate this point that you're making about interest rates and the appreciation of home values, housing inflation, I guess, when I purchased my first home, it was in 2011. My ex-husband was a banker. He was a personal banker at First Tennessee. He made about $45,000 a year. His take home was probably closer to 42. And here I am, a recent law school graduate, right? So I have no money. So he had to get this FHA loan in his name. The home was purchased for $133,000. It's in South Nashville, very close to Lenox Village. And little 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Perfect for us. And we had a THDA down payment assistance. Our earnest money was $500. We ended up bringing $300 to the closing. It was a total all cash in of $800. And our monthly payment with the mortgage insurance, the taxes, and the insurance was $782. In 2015, we sold that house to a lady who still lives there today, and we sold it to her for $154. And to get into that same house today, just 8 years later, would cost you $350. That's what those houses are comping for in that market. But the problem is interest rates are so much higher than when we purchased, our interest rate was 4.5. Now the interest rate is 7.5 on an FHA, I think, close to it. And so in order to qualify for that house, you can't make $45,000. You can't make $60,000. You've got to make a lot more. We're talking about closer to $90,000, right? And if you have other debt, it can be even harder for you to get into that house. So when Tonya is talking about, pricing people out of these loans and pricing people out of the market, it's not always the down payment, the cash down payment. It's actually qualifying on an income level for these loans too.
You're seeing a lot more higher debt to income ratios, having to get more creative on getting exceptions for income. The client I just closed, I was telling you about, it took us, I think 7 weeks, and got them to the closing table, but they were a 55.5. By the time we got everything and got the exception, we got them down to a 53, and we're able not to, because if you do a manual underwrite, it won't work. So we've got an automated approval finally, but it was like 24 hours before closing. Everyone was communicated. Everyone knew. The challenge part was they were selling their home, and they didn't want to sell their home until they got the clear to close, of course, right? And they have 3 kids. And so, and there was a little bit of a language barrier too. Wonderful couple, very grateful. Sometimes the hardest clients that I've gotten into the home are the most grateful clients. And that's what brings joy in the mortgage business, because it's very stressful, very chaotic. Me and that realtor probably at least talked 12 times a day.
Wow.
Just because, she was juggling both sides, and she had, they had the buyer that was buying their home, and it was my builder that I work with. So it was just a very intense, but they were just so very grateful that they were able to get the home because they wanted to increase their home size because of the children.
Right, because of the kids.
Yeah. So with us talking about interest rates and everything that is we're seeing on this side with higher rates, affordability, income issues, the loan level pricing adjustments, pushing people even higher than what the average market is. I want to get your take. We got to take a break right now. When we come back, I want to get your take on what you're seeing out there on the streets when it comes to real estate and negotiating contracts, and what your activity is that you're seeing with Nashville. Okay. So stay tuned. You're listening to the Tonya Esquibel Real Estate Show right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Welcome back to the Tonya Esquibel Real Estate Show. Tonya Esquibel here every Saturday from noon to 1. If you would like to find out some information, find out what rates are, or maybe 100% financing on some of the options that we just got with Cross Country Mortgage to help get you into home ownership, give us a call at 615-300-0794, 615-300-0794. In studio with me is my co-host, Kim Hollingshead with Hollingshead & Associate, real estate attorney. And we have a wonderful guest. Richard Courtney is in the house today.
Yeah.
And bringing some really great expert advice during this segment. If you're just tuning in, we were just talking about the shift in interest rates hitting that mid 7.5 mark for some clients, some even at 8% at this point, depending on their credit scores, just due to the shift in the market. And then also debt to income ratios, because the sales prices continue to rise. So the income that they could maybe afford with low rates a year ago just pushed them out of that price point that they're looking at this year. So that was what we were talking about opening up the show today. And again, you can catch this on podcast and YouTube, Spotify, and also you can watch our reels on social media. But now we're going to get Richard's take on it from a realtor standpoint and see what you're seeing out there in the market. So take it away.
Well, one thing that's very interesting about this market that defies all economic philosophies is up until July, our inventory was rising and our sales were plummeting, but our prices were rising. So usually less demand will drop the prices. And that hasn't happened until July of this year. And that's when prices finally dropped, the median price for the area, and that Robertson, Cheatham, Davidson, all over Middle Tennessee. So that's we're starting to see lower prices. That doesn't mean a house that sold for $1 million last year is going to sell for $800 this year. It means a house that was going to sell, if it followed the trend, for $1.2 million might come on the market for $1.1 million. But
Right.
what's interesting about all of this is if you look at this July versus last July, sales overall are down 13%. Yet sales over $1 million are up about 1% or 2%. So people who aren't relying so much on loans in the upper end, but the reason sales are down is because of the lower end, because they are struggling. And what's different in the lending industry that I see is when I first got into real estate back in 1979 and interest rates went to 18, that's when they invented the adjustable rate mortgage, also known as the ARM. And they don't have those anymore. And throughout all the interest rate bumps through the years, we could always say, well, let's just take an adjustable rate mortgage and sit this thing out. And that's not there anymore. So that's a problem.
They're just not attractive. So that it goes back to just pricing them out of the market. I mean, a 10-6 ARM is higher than the 30-year fix. So why would you do it? A 7-6 ARM is maybe an 1/8% difference. So, but that's one of the things I keep telling my bosses. I'm like, we need to have a really aggressive ARM.
Right.
Like a 5-1, 7-1, to be able to help.
That are a point or two lower than the
That is
par,
correct.
as
Yes,
you said.
yes.
Yeah.
So that is, in the past, we would always do that.
Yeah.
The one thing that came back, but a lot of consumers, I mean, we did so many 3-2-1 buy downs. I don't really call it a buy down with a consumer. I just say it's stepping into home ownership. It's kind of our step program to step you into home ownership. But we did so many of those, probably 10, 15 years ago. And that would help those first-time home buyers get in. You remember FHA sweat equity with some of the builders?
Right.
They would do sweat equity for their down payment. So now we're going back to the buy downs, but the consumers in today's time, they don't want them. And, it's really a good deal if you buy that rate down because the buyer cannot pay it. So it has to be either seller incentive or lender incentive. But if you're at 7.5% and you could start maybe your buy down rate at 4.5%, that's a good rate for your first year. And then the second year you go to 5.5%. And then if the market shifts back and does start to improve a little bit, then at cross country, we will refinance them without charging them any lender fees.
Right.
So they could be
Nice.
4.5%, 5.5%. And even if they got to 6.5% in the third year, it's still lower than their 7.5% that they would have year one here.
Right.
But for some reason, consumers just, I don't know if they feel it's an ARM, but it's not an ARM. It's fixed. You know exactly every year what that rate's going to go to. And then once you hit that fourth year, then it's locked at your 30-year rate.
Now, do they have to qualify on a DTI based on the fourth year rate or
On the final rate, yeah.
On the final rate
Yeah.
is what they're qualifying for. So
And then the thing with the
that is
ARMs, like I said, the bond market is, some days they are okay. I probably have maybe closed 5 ARMs this year just because the 30-year fix is better. But you do have to kind of check the
Right.
pricing and kind of watch it. But the thing that with the ARMs is you qualify them. If a client does want an ARM, you qualify them at the capped rate, not your
Right.
start rate. So sometimes that will push people out of qualifying for an ARM just because you have to qualify
Right.
them at 5% higher.
for that higher rate. That's such a good point, Richard, that the loan products, so I was at a Mortgage Bankers Association luncheon, and it was a panel discussion with some local politicians in Sumner County, and one of them said, well, our housing market here in Sumner County, we have the same problem that everybody has. These young people, they want $600,000 houses, but they only want to pay $1,200 a month for it. And, and I think that's a little bit of an insensitive statement. And I think those of us sitting here at this table know why, because it is really, truly a challenge for people making a normal wage, a regular middle class living, to be able to get into home ownership right now because the rates are so high. And so we do talk about, well, in the past the rates were much higher back then, but they also had different loan products too that they could work with. So let me get your opinion on something. I would love to know what you guys think about the 40-year. Have you guys heard this, that they're tossing around the idea of a 40-year mortgage to try to bring the payments down a little lower? What do you think about that?
They've talked about that for 30 or 40 years. So every time this happens, because supposedly they do it in Japan or somewhere like that. I don't know where they do it. But the one thing, though, that it isn't being marketed well, and maybe I know it's hard for lenders to quote things in advertisement, like rates and other things.
Yes.
But I heard of some programs yesterday, especially some of these no down payment where there's no PMI. And if someone can not pay PMI, that's the same thing as getting a 7.5% loan for 6.5% because the PMI is so high.
Yeah,
so if you're going
right.
to avoid that on one of whatever you have over there in your bag of tricks, that's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. And
You're
that helps
right.
them too. A lot of those are tied with a second to avoid the PMI. So you have a second payment, and depending on which program you use, is it forgivable or is it not forgivable? So
Is this
just
the
depends.
80-20 from the early 2000s?
No, it's just like, let's say FHA is 96.5%, kind of like THDA. They have a second, but they are giving you that for your down payments, but
Right.
you are paying it back over a 10-year period, but there's no interest on it.
So that's
but
nice.
With FHA, though, you still have the PMI on there.
Right.
So there's only a couple conventional ones that you can look at putting that down payment assistance program with them. But we do have those, yeah.
So now, if you're in a neighborhood with a homeowners association, do those payments also factor in
Yes.
when it comes? So maybe, I know, right?
Those can hurt.
That's why it's hard for people buying townhomes and condos sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. They face some special challenges when trying to get into homeownership.
We started putting in our pre-approval letters probably 7 years ago because we have grown so much with condos and townhomes. And that was like one of the things I'm like, are you looking at a townhome or a condo or a single family? Because I can qualify someone for a single family and max them at a 49% ratio. But if they go get the same sales price and we throw in a $250 or $350 HOA, then they don't qualify anymore. So that's something that every
Right.
lender should ask their clients because it could affect, consumer doesn't understand. They're
Right.
like, hey, you gave me a pre-approval letter. And I'm like, yeah, but now you've got an HOA that's not there. So I always explain that to them if they're doing a townhome or condo. The other thing with the condo too is making sure is it Fannie approved, is it Freddie approved? Because if not, then you got to go non-warrantable, which those rates are substantially higher than your normal interest rates. And then if it's FHA, it has to be FHA approved. So
There are some special
it's always good to
considerations.
ask, what type of home are you looking at buying?
So when we're talking about some special challenges that the buyers are facing in today's market. When you are representing a listing, how are you addressing this to try to draw in more buyers to your properties?
Well, we try to find something that's, some sort of incentive. And we did the 505, for example.
Yes.
And in a number of those, we might pay 2 years of homeowners insurance or 2 years of parking or something where not so much to get them qualified, but to just make it more comfortable for them to take that mortgage if they had a mortgage. And I know different ways, more loan packages are important for us, and that's why someone like Tonya can come in handy to help sell some properties. But then on the upper end side, it's business as usual. It's nutty out there. They're still throwing. We had a $7 million closing last week, and Lisa Peebles, my partner, and I, and they just wrote a check for $7 million.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Are they from California?
no, they're not.
Surprisingly.
Yeah. Wow. No, there are other people that are, the stock market's up so high too.
Yeah.
So people have, and so the decision some in the upper end have to make is, do I want to leave a couple million over there in the stock market and just see what happens? Or it's a pretty good time to sell off some of this stuff and I'll just throw it into real estate and diversify their portfolio somewhat. So
Yes. Yeah. It is such an interesting time. The economy is doing some wacky stuff, like you said.
it makes no sense.
It makes absolutely
Especially Nashville. We're different than everyone else, really. The way our prices continue to rise and our sales are still somewhere around where they were about 6 years ago, which is, we thought that was great back then to sell 3,000 houses in a month, which we did in July this year. But I remember, because I'm as old as Methuselah, but I remember when we sold 3,000 for the first time in a month, and we were dancing in the streets. And now it's, oh gosh, we only sold 3,000. So
yes, it's true. We're back to 2017, aren't we?
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
1980, whatever year you want to choose.
So, what do you think? What is the attraction with Nashville?
Well, for one thing, in the whole state, there's no individual income tax, which is the main thing. And people around here are singing the blues, but our property taxes, are actually lower than most of the taxes where people are coming from here. And then we have this great quality of life here. And again, people who live here may not think so. The traffic's gotten a little worse, and downtown, depending on what you like to do, might be a little different than it was 7 or 8 years ago. And but we have the Titans and the Predators. Now the soccer team's doing really well, and everything's happening wonderful over there. And the Sounds are doing well, and there's some talk of Major League Baseball coming here that looks somewhat promising. So we're just a fun place to be, and people like it here.
I'm just waiting for the Major League Basketball team.
We have
NBA,
to pull them away from Memphis.
I know.
FedEx.
Hey, we did it. We did it with the Titans.
I agree. We need a
No, the Titans never were in Memphis, really.
It was just a temporary. It was a temporary stop.
Well,
I know they started Houston Oilers because I'm a Texas girl.
but
so.
they came here and called themselves
Tennessee Oilers,
thinking that's going to help things and bring in fans from Memphis. But all it did is make Memphis mad.
Yeah.
They didn't get them to begin with, so Memphis hates us anyway. But we have a better housing market than they do.
Yeah, we do.
For sure.
So take that.
But I think it will be difficult to have an NBA team and a hockey team playing in the same arena when they have the same season.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. And we just got a new Titan stadium. We're not even going to get into those conversations.
We're not going to talk about it.
All right. We got to take a break. Stay tuned. You're listening to Tonya Esquibel Real Estate Show right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Welcome back to the Tonya Esquibel Real Estate Show. Tonya Esquibel with Cross Country Mortgage, Southeast Regional Producing Manager. Been helping families in Tennessee since 1997 achieve the American dream. If you'd like to get some information, find out your purchasing power, maybe you need some help with a down payment assistance, give us a call at 615-300-0794, 615-300-0794. I have my co-host in studio with me, Kim Hollingshead with Hollingshead & Associates, and an attorney. We got to tell that story on the air because they need to go listen to that video that you did. You got to drive them to it. And then we have Richard Courtney in with us today. Yes. And if you're just tuning in, we were talking about the market in Nashville, what is attracting people to Nashville. Opening the show, we talked about interest rates, but if you missed it, you can always go check it out on our podcast. That will be coming up soon. And then also on our YouTube channel as well, and our social media reels. So let's continue on about Nashville.
Okay.
It is special to me. I moved here in 97 and I've seen the growth, and I've learned more about Nashville from a political standpoint too, the last 90 days, 120 days, I should say. And it really is a special place. And a lot of people are passionate about keeping Nashville for Nashvillians, but also we want the tourists to come in. It's just how do we manage that, manage the infrastructure and the growth at a sustainable level. But everyone loves Nashville. So tell us what you love about Nashville and
Well, I love the
areas.
music scene. I've written a couple of books, Buyers Are Liars and Sellers Are Too being one, and then another one called Come Together, The Business Wisdom of the Beatles, and I'm a Beatles fan. And I had 4 Beatles festivals here, one for TPAC, one for Belcourt, and 2 for Community Resource Center. Raised a lot of money for them. And what I learned when working with all these Beatles people is they all love it here because our musicians are so wonderful, and they can just plug right in and play any song that you ask any of them pretty much to do. And the talent level here from the music side is unbelievable.
Yes.
And people come here and they can't believe what they're hearing. And there's so many options here. It's almost like Yogi Berra. Nobody goes there anymore. It's so crowded, nobody goes there anymore. But you can't get in any of the venues anymore. And then, of course, Taylor Swift's out here selling 70,000 tickets a night for 3 straight nights.
Yes.
In the pouring rain. And so that side's wonderful. And then we've been fortunate with the Predators, gotten the Stanley Cup Finals and down to the seventh game before they lost. The Titans were in the Super Bowl. I mean, everything here just points to greatness.
Absolutely.
I'm starting to see a lot more other businesses start to launch out. You're getting more like my daughter lived in LA for the last 8 years, and she ran one of the biggest studios for all their events and negotiated all the contracts for high-end profile people. And we're starting to see studios like that start to pop up here in the Nashville area. So because not everyone wants to fly to LA. We're more centralized, and so they would get people flying in from all over the world. And this seems to be a more centralized location. So I was really hoping that they would like open up a store, because her next position would be where her boss is, like to just run the whole thing, because she was like second in charge.
Yeah.
And I'm still praying about it. I'm still hopeful. But Milk was just a really good company for her. But that is something that I've noticed now that she's been here, all of the different studios that are opening up. They're just not at the level of what you see in New York and LA with Milk Studios.
Yeah.
The other thing is you've got, we talk more art too. Like there's a lot more art things and gatherings that are happening. And I love artwork. So, yeah, it's a beautiful city. It's a fun city. I have a question for you. And since you've been here for so long, were you born and raised here?
No, I was born here, but raised in Columbia, Tennessee. And then I went to school at Sewanee College.
Okay.
And then I came back here. Okay. So I've been in this area all my life, which is 68 years.
Okay.
So it's a long time.
And was your first career always real estate, or did you have a previous career?
My first career was I was a school teacher at Columbia Military Academy, and then I came up here for Nashville City Bank, and my roommate was an old friend of mine from Columbia Military Academy, Lee Williams. Some of you know him. And I was living with him, and I was making about $10,000 a year, and he was making a lot more than that. And he went to work at 10 in the morning, and I had to drive downtown at 6:30, pay to park, wear a 3-piece suit at that time. And I decided, I think what he's doing is a lot more fun than what I'm doing. So I got in 1978 in real estate, and I've been here ever since, and through the ups and downs. And it's been fun to watch, but it's where we are, and I train a lot of people now, is that it's hard to convince anyone that where we are now, interest rate wise, is a healthy place and not a. It is limiting for. Well, here's where we're in trouble. I think is like a lot of people now are in houses with 2.78%, 2.875%, or 3 or 4, whatever. Well, they don't want to move and get an 8% mortgage. So I think that's holding us back some as far as if the rates did ever drop to even 5, I think it would explode again like it did 2 years ago.
Yeah. So in your, from the real estate standpoint and the associations, what are their projections and rates going into, fourth quarter, first quarter of next year, going into a big election year again?
Well, it depends on who you talk to, and they're the glass half empty, glass half full. But to see the transactional activity that we see now is phenomenal. The rates twice as much as they were. So and with no. In the past, if the rates were 8, you could get an ARM for 5, 6, 7, and 8. But now you can't. And so, in spite of that, we continue to grow. And then we have, more and more people. Like what we're seeing, I think we've been under really good leadership as a whole from the mayor's office. And people are saying, why didn't they put in subways or trains or whatever? Well, I can imagine if Bill Boner in 1980 or 82 when he came into office said, I know what, let's take $7 or $8 million and build a light rail system. They just said he's crazy. Or any of the mayors all along the way. Nobody anticipated this because it's just nutty what's happened here. So I think the city's been well led through all of this, and that's what keeps people coming here too. And I think we're in good shape, whoever wins the election coming up in a few weeks. And so the other thing I have noticed through all the years, and people think this is crazy, incumbent presidents, whoever they are, even if they won or lost, it seems like they have a magic button they can push and make the economy get really good during election year, be it George H.W. Bush way back then, or Reagan, or well, except for Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
20% rates were a little tough, but all the rest of them, it seems like election year, there's some gimmick they can pull, and I don't know what it is, and it's probably just a coincidence. But I look for next year to be really strong
in our market.
Yeah, I feel like first quarter of next year we'll start to see rates settle back down. Some say going into the end, like December, leading up into first quarter,
Right.
because that was where we had such a shock that first year. In December, I was quoting people 2 7/8. By the end of January, we were like almost at 4%. That's how it moved the quickest in my entire career. And I've been doing this for what, 29 years now, I think.
Right.
So I do think that election year does bring some good revenue with the stock
look what I've
market
done.
and the bond market. Yes, exactly. Vote for me again. 4 more years.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do agree with that 100%. What about this? Just looking at our city instead of the big scope of it, because we do have a big runoff, and a lot of people don't even vote in Nashville.
Hardly anyone does.
I know. I learned that too. Like in our district, I think it was maybe 1,700 people, 1,800 that voted. That was it out of our entire district of like 8,900 people. So that's very low.
I think only 25% citywide vote who are registered voters.
And then I hear with a runoff, it's even lower because people don't want to go back to the polls, or maybe their person they didn't like isn't in the runoff, regardless of who's endorsing who. They just are like, I'm just gonna stay out of it.
Yeah.
But what I hear from just my journey these last 120 days, so you've got Freddie O'Connell, he's kind of, a little bit more progressive. And then you've got Alice Rowley, which we all know is a Republican, which we haven't had a Republican mayor, in over 20 years? Ever? Okay. Something I read.
Since we
was
became
saying,
Metro.
Yeah.
61.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting. I think it's a hard road for,
Yeah, well, we're
for her to
a blue
approach,
dot in a red state. Nashville is,
Yes.
and then the elections are really officially nonpartisan. There's no
They're
initial
officially
beside
nonpartisan,
anybody's
yes.
name, but everyone knows.
Everyone does, and everyone always asks, are you Democrat or Republican?
Right.
And I'm like, it's nonpartisan race. And they're like, are you a Democrat or Republican?
The one thing I think might be different about this one is there's so many good council at large people running who are spending money and raising money and spending it. And I think the council races might bring out enough people to vote, more people maybe.
That would be good.
Would vote for the mayor.
Yeah.
But then we only had 100,000 vote in the general election, and I bet it's 85 or 90,000 this time. That's what happened when Megan Barry and David Box were in the runoff. It dropped considerably.
Right.
Yeah.
We have some amazing pockets of the city. We have some places in Nashville that are off the beaten path. They're not everything about Nashville is all on Broadway or West End, right?
Thankfully.
Yeah, I mean, Green Hills, I just went to Green Hills the other day, and it is so timeless. I love that entire area of the city. And I know that you have your office out there. So
We do.
Yeah.
It's funny, Chad Wohlers, who's a great real estate agent, but sells mainly downtown.
Yes.
And he and I partnered on a deal, and I said, you need to come to our office. It's right by Green Hills Mall. And he said, where? I don't know where that is.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of our agents say they need to get a passport to get down to Williamson County.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is funny.
Yeah.
I remember a time where you could get anywhere in the city in 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, we got to take a break. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Tonya Esquibel Real Estate Show right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Tonya Esquibel Real Estate Show, the original real estate show here in Nashville, every Saturday from noon to 1. If you would like to find out some information and maybe see what home ownership looks like for you today, maybe you need down payment assistance, give us a call. We'd be happy to help you. Our local team is standing by at 615-300-0794, 615-300-0794. In studio with me is my co-host, Kim Hollingshead with Hollingshead & Associates, real estate attorney. And then also we have Richard Courtney with Frederick & Clark, and sharing a lot of knowledge about why people love Nashville, about the market in general. And so we've got probably about 9 minutes left here in the show. So continue to fill us in.
Okay.
Yes.
And what would you like to know, Tonya?
Well, Richard has such a great LinkedIn
Yes.
profile. I would refer anybody who's interested in, learning more about Nashville and really reading the news. And you do a great job of going in depth on a lot of topics and really doing a deep dive into something. You don't just post a link and say, hey, everybody, here it is. But he will write a lengthy article, lengthy post to explain what's happening.
Yeah, well, I have to write a column that's about 1,100 words every week for the Nashville Ledger. And so it seems like it's Monday every day to me because it's due at noon Monday. So I have to find something to write about every single week. And so I learn a lot doing the research for that and meet a lot of new agents. And it's been exciting. I've been writing a column somewhere for 23 years. So the other day I printed them, and there are about 1,180 of them. So that's a lot of real estate columns.
That is.
And it's fun to go back and read the old ones where, rates have dropped to 9%. Everybody go buy a house. And now I hope we never see 9%. I don't think we will.
Yeah.
Right. And when you got into real estate, it was 1979, you said?
Yeah, 18%.
And, 18% interest. And I remember when I got into title, I was working for Jim Vanderpool, a very great title attorney in Franklin, and Jack Case Wilson, who's no longer in practice, but also.
I love him. I don't think he's alive.
He's unfortunately, a fantastic attorney. I learned so much from him. And I remember when I first got in, we used to fax everything. Do you remember this?
We used to handwrite our own good faith estimates in 1003.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
that.
They were.
And we didn't even have credit scores
Oh my gosh. And we had
when I first got in.
And we had to fax these documents back and forth so many times that by the time we got it at the title company, it had been faxed, 17 times. And I'm going, what does that say right here?
Sometimes that was intentional.
Oh, really?
You don't need to know everything.
Well, I remember, you didn't have automated underwriting. You didn't have any of that. So you would box up your files and you would FedEx them to the underwriter. And so we'd be there rushing as fast as we could to get as many files in there. And then I'd throw candy in it because I needed it to get looked at really quick. So we'd find out what our underwriters like. And they loved getting our FedEx boxes because it always had treats in it.
Sending in little treats please help me get this approved. And the MLS back then used to be an actual book, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like a phone book, if anybody knows what that is, or a Sears catalog, which I'm sure no one knows what that is, but a big, thick book. And they were delivered in a special way, so we all learned the route because that was all of our information was in that book, and it only came out once a week. So, like the Browning Company down the street would get theirs at about 8 o'clock, and at Frederick and Clark, we'd only get ours about 10 o'clock. So I'd run up to the Browning Company before they opened and get their book and come back and make copies of all the pages I needed and then take their book back and put it on their front porch.
Wow, back in the day.
That was it. And we hid keys under rocks so that we didn't have MLS lock boxes and things like that.
Yes, and y'all used to have to drive around and get all the papers signed.
That part was fun though because we did get to know each other better. We knew where all the other real estate agents lived, and we knew like if they liked to have a little drink every now and then. We knew if they liked to drink. We knew what their living room looked like, and we really got along better, I think, back then. But the whole world's changed, of course.
It was more relationship driven.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, and now there are so many agents. I think in Middle Tennessee, something like 20-something thousand agents just here in Middle Tennessee now. So what do you think about the number of agents and because you hear all the time, well, I mean, the barrier of entry is just too low. We need to increase, education requirements. So, and I know you train a lot of new agents. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, for one thing, we're gaining like 1,000 agents per year. So 3,000 of our 6,000 agents have only been in for less than 4 years. And that's difficult when we have to train them on the spot. Some of these companies don't have as good a training as other companies do. And in my column that's coming out today, it's not. The column that came out last week, says that Randy Rayburn and the Goldberg brothers and all the restaurant owners are probably going to end their employee shortage because all these realtors will be coming back out and waiting tables again here in a little while.
I was going to ask you what the turnover percentage is because so many loan officers nationwide have gotten out of the business this year. And I feel like going into fourth quarter and just being involved with regional and seeing different loan officers throughout our Southeast region, we're struggling. I mean, it's the lowest it's been in 20 years for the mortgage side of the industry. And it's maybe not, obviously sales are down, but Nashville is still a great market. But what you have is, like you said, more cash buyers. You have, the ones that are in it and want to stay in it. You've got banks that are coming in doing portfolio loans that are cutting things out of the way, as far as niche programs that you don't get on the secondary market side, especially when it gets into over $1 million price points. So you're just seeing a lot of challenges from the standpoint of qualifications, like we talked about with income. So you might get, 10 applications, but maybe only 2 of them actually really qualify. So I just have noticed through the cycle since I got in 95, you see when rates start to rise, that's when you see people go, oh my gosh, did I miss it? And run out to try to apply. And therefore you always see a more challenged credit borrower, challenged income borrower when we start to see these interest rates rise. So I think from the loan officer side, you'll probably see even more loan officers getting out by the end of the year. To your point of, just so many realtors jump in because they jump in when things are really, really good. Right. And then if they didn't have a foundation to continue growing through the bad time or continue to bring in new relationships, and that's what you'll see them moving out.
Yeah, and that, like, our industry is the entry level is so easy. Like, you take 180 hours, and you get a real estate license. It takes 1,600 hours to cut somebody's hair. So we're a little more easily entry than we are for them. And I think when the Board of Realtors or Greater Nashville Realtors dues come due in December and January, they have through January without having a late payment. I think in February and March we'll start to see the fall, unless the thing turns around. But for example, the 3,000 we closed in July this year, we closed 4,300 in July 2 years ago,
right?
And more than that 3 years ago. So there's not enough pieces of the pie to go around, really. But the prices are so high, they can make money on.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Right. And so what do you think is now a good time? Let's say I'm thinking about getting into real estate. I've been thinking about it for a while. Is now a good time to become an agent to cut your teeth in a tough market like this?
I think it would be good because what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So
agreed.
If they can get through it, and they need to learn more inventive ways that, like when I got in, I said it was 18%. And so I had through the years to come up with different marketing plans that fit that market.
That market, right.
And so now I have, a treasure chest full of different ideas to help people buy houses and sell houses, and that's what people getting in now. I mean, it's still lucrative. I mean, the median sales price is still, even though it's down a little bit, $430,000. So that's not bad. Sell 3 or 4 of those, you're all right.
Yeah,
Better than your other friend who was making 45 at a bank a long time ago.
That's right. I mean, there's always an opportunity to start a business, to grow a business in every market. And I think I saw a really great statistic that the vast majority of all the companies on the S&P 500 all either were started or launched during a recession or grew during the recession, and then that's what took them to the next level. Right. And we can really do the same thing in our market when we're in a tough market. I look at a lot of really great real estate companies that started in around 2007 to 2011. I know that I started my first title company in 2010. I didn't know what a good market looked like until like 2017, 2018.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like my first years in the business, I didn't know any better. And now I look at the real estate agents who did get in, like the little pandemic agents, and they're scratching their heads and they don't know what to do because nobody's taught them techniques like farming. That is such a great technique to earn more listings, but they've never had to do that. I haven't seen neighborhoods being farmed very much at all, and I know because I live here and I'm not getting the material. So,
Well, one thing I'm sure you've addressed it in the past, but one thing we're hearing over and over is these people calling people, and many of them unsuspecting, naive, and say, "I'd like to buy your house."
Yes.
And that is
all the time.
Horrible thing that's going on. And people are being bilked out of hundreds and thousands of dollars.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I don't like you mean the wholesaling. stuff that's going on.
People call, hey, you want to sell your, like I get calls because they think it's my listing. They think I own it because I have it listed and say, do you want to sell your house at such and such? And I said, yeah, for this price. And then they don't ever call back.
Yeah.
But if I said, I'll take whatever you offer, which some do.
They do. And lose thousands of dollars. Well, it has been such a pleasure, Richard, Courtney, Frederick, and Clark, to have you on the show today. Thank you, Kim, for bringing in a wonderful guest.
Thank you for
And
being
if
here.
you're just now tuning in and you missed the show, please know that you can check it out on our social media and also our podcast and Spotify, YouTube. Be sure and tune in next week right here to the Tonya Esquibel Real Estate Show every Saturday from noon to 1. And have a blessed and safe week.
Thank you.